All right, welcome back to the Girlboss Grindset, the most hardest to schedule podcast in the galaxy.
All right.
The whole premise is Hannah, to my left, and I am Keith, are both Australian board game designers, creators, publishers. We do it all, and that's the problem. That is the essence of the Girlboss Grindset. We're doing too much shit, and that makes our podcast really hard to schedule and organize. But
We're going it out, and that's the
that's
key.
it. That's exactly it. And we have something special planned for you today where we fix every board game ever for you today. All of them, they're all bad, and we're going to fix every single one. The premise kind of is that we're going to pick out some stuff, some probably treasured classics that everybody enjoys. It's going to be like, pitch, here's the game, here's the one thing that really bugs me, and then we're both going to discuss on how to fix the one thing.
Sounds good.
Really easy one to start off because I kind of have one loaded in the chamber for this is Settlers of Catan. And the thing that's wrong with it is the robber. There's other things wrong with this game, but this is the one thing in particular we're going to focus on to start with.
So in the expansion, you can like steal shit from people, or is it?
Talk about just base game. Just base game. In the generic way Catan works, you roll two dice, and the sum of those two dice determines where resources come from, and it's scaled from 1 to 10, right? 1 to 12, sorry. And the 7, the most commonly rolled number on a pair of d6, is the robber, which lets you move it to a place where no one can get resources, and you steal something from someone else. So the most commonly performed action in the game is telling one person in particular to get fucked, which I think is terrible.
Yeah. I made a game like that. It was called Still in Business, and
Yeah,
because you just ganged up on whoever was the strongest.
kill the leader.
It was awful. But,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So the rubber, it's not. Why isn't it good? Why isn't it fun?
So, anecdotally, I played a game recently. I'm in last place. I have one card in hand. I am of no threat to anyone. And then 3 consecutive turns in a row, I get exactly one resource, like back up to one, and someone places the robber, stealing my one card, giving me nothing to do on my one turn. So I spend 4 turns doing nothing because my opponents, who are 5, 6 points ahead of me, would rather gang up on me, the losing player, than actually choose something that is correct strategy in the game. And I think that's kind of ridiculous, personally.
Yeah.
I think, in the way that some things should be constructed, if the intention behind something is to take a lead away from a player, it should intrinsically say that's what it is doing. This is my goal. Hey, put the robber on a location that is adjacent to the person with the most points, or it's just strictly steal a resource from the person with the most points. I think encouraging people to punch down doesn't
Mm,
doesn't ensure a fun game.
yeah. It's interesting that they've allowed it to be like literally any player at the table because it can be like
Yourself, yeah.
which is like in Mario Kart where you're more likely to get this really powerful tool if you're like in last place or something
Mm.
to do a catch up mechanic. And yeah, like why do you think that they sort of allowed that? And was it like was it funny to gang up on you? Like is that why they were doing it, or
I don't
was
know.
it
I was playing on a digital version of the game
or
where they
yeah,
don't actually see me there as a person and they don't actually really chat to you as a person. They're just like, I'm just going to keep putting this here because it's not me or whatever. But it's like, at that point, it's like, why? What? This doesn't benefit you in any way. Like,
okay,
um, but yeah, I think the initial idea behind the design is that it is symmetrical and therefore fair. Because anyone that rolls a 7 could do it to any person regardless of which place that they're in. But I think that doesn't work, right? In the same way that capitalism is a system designed to keep the rich rich and the poor poor, this does the exact same thing. It's not a robber, it's a enforcer. Like it doesn't do what's true to its name,
yeah, it's like
right?
a deep state like
Yeah. There you go.
yeah,
There's your big
governance.
board game conspiracy. Catan is
Yeah,
secretly
hey,
colonialist rich people propaganda. No
hell yeah.
surprise there.
Oh, settlers of Catan. I mean,
Yeah,
meaningless.
putting the settlers and settlers. My proposed fix,
All right.
I did mention this to a friend before after I had a big sook to him about it, is that instead of the robber taking something from one person, the robber gives everyone a resource of the location you put it on. So you can still strategically use this effect to not help some people and help you more than others. Like if you have a person that you know for a fact has tons of sheep that won't trade to you and you need a sheep,
Yeah.
you can give everyone a sheep. That person that has a ton is like, whatever, it's my seventh one, this doesn't help me. But you're like, I've been waiting all game for this thing. And it helps the game move along rather than constantly nothing happening, constantly nothing happening. 6 sevens rolled in a row, like this is the most common number that can set up. It just means the game doesn't progress at all. And in fact, it slows down more. Wouldn't you rather a punchier game where you're like, okay, I know I need brick, but this guy over here might win the game if I give him brick to steal the longest road, or something like that. And suddenly the game seems much, much more interesting to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I think my proposal would revolve around like what was the problem they were trying to fix
Hmm.
by putting that rule in, and possibly it was like because you can trade in Qatar, but you can't really
Yeah,
trade.
well, I think the main thing the robot
Mm.
does is
Yeah.
that it stops a location making resources. And so if you recognize that a particular spot is key to the person in the lead, that's where you put the robber. You're like,
Yeah.
if I put this here, you'll never get brick. And they're like, okay.
Mm.
Which that on its own seems fine, but you can still cut off a person who is just desperately waiting for the one thing to even be in the game, which
Mm.
doesn't work, right? And then they added this extra thing, which is like they've already said fuck you. Here's the second one, like you're already reeling from that first insult, and then here is a personalized one for you in particular. Where they pick something and they steal something from you. I feel like both of these things together is egregious, and one or the other would have been fine.
Mm. They wouldn't have been wanting to allow people to just be assholes to each other, though. Like, they must have been some sort of reason for it, which I think, yeah, I think it's about the flow of resources between players in Qatar.
Mm,
Because at a certain point, you sort of get to a stage where if you played well enough, you don't really need other players, and you could just be playing a solitaire game. So I imagine they were trying to increase interactivity between people. And Dominion sort of had this as well. Like it was
mm,
an engine builder with like there were some cards that allowed interaction, but it wasn't like super interactive necessarily. And you could just play yourself and optimize and silo. And then they had expansions that increased the interactability and stuff like that. So maybe for Catan, like so here's a radical proposal.
mm,
Maybe having a deck of like say that saying the players are sort of like a council or something. So when a seven is rolled, or some other number or a double or something like that, then what you actually do, you maybe even have a little deck of like things you can draw, and then you decide they're like additional laws or rules or something that allow players to talk about everything that they want,
mm,
um, and also to make decisions. So maybe all players get a free wood, or like all players need to discard their ship, or something like that. Um, and so yeah, like every now and then, rather than just being able to block something or take something from someone else, which was kind of shit in your experience as the person being taken from, you end up in a situation where all the players end up discussing and talking and negotiating some kind of change to the game
mm.
that yeah can negatively benefit some people and positively benefit other people, but you'd be trading favors for future votes and this kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like having a game like Catan where you have your core gameplay loop
Yeah.
and then you just add like 20 tokens and on the token it's just like I owe you a favor. And you're like I want to
Yeah.
I want you to do this really bad trade with me and they're like okay, but you're going to owe me a favor. And then when they go, I want you to do this really bad trade with me, and you're like, oh, but it's really bad for me. And like, I don't care. You owe me a favor. You have to spend that token.
You know what? Actually, yeah, maybe that would work better in Catan. Actually, yeah, you could call them like they could be favors, but it's something really Catania. Like,
Yeah, because that encourages the flow of trade. Because in Catan, you can literally just embargo someone and just never trade with them. You can sit there and not interact. And then you can lock things down with the robber. There's a lot of cards that also lock things down, but then there's also the card which is the Year of Plenty, which literally um, gives you resources and all this kind of stuff. It just feels like there's a weird mix, and the balance that they were trying to strike feels really chaotic rather than a streamlined gameplay experience of encouraging the players to charge towards this goal, which is
Mm,
how you would think it would be. Instead, they've
yeah.
made it weirdly unstructured and interactive
Yeah,
in
it'd be
that
interesting.
way.
Like, so anyone watching, if you know the story behind the robber and how it was integrated, why it was included, like let us know because that would be, or even urban legends. But
Yeah,
yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of hear more perspectives on why that might have happened. Um, yeah, and also to everyone watching, if you have a game you would like to hear us, fix,
fix.
let us know.
Yeah, fix. Um, all right. Do you have a pitch?
I
Do you have a
do.
game?
Classic game. Connect Four.
Connect Four. So Connect
Yeah,
Four has the first player advantage problem.
that's right. It also has, four is pretty overdone. Just make it five. Done. End of the day. Found that one.
Uh,
Maybe you could add letters to Connect Four. That'd be
Sounds like something an idiot would do.
pretty. Well, you're working
So
on that
yeah,
is
it's something on my shelf currently.
grid. You drop things in. You're trying to
Mm.
super complicated tic tac toe.
So what
And
letter drop is the name of the game? What letter drop does to solve the Connect Four problem is that connecting four doesn't win the game, and you can win the game without having to connect four. Connect four is your double word score, triple word score, all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So it's like a secondary points boost that's unnecessary, and that sort of does solve that problem of the first player issue.
mm,
But then conversely, Letter Drop has the issue of whoever's going last can orchestrate the last couple of moves of the game to like lock it up, so either nothing happens or they get like the one last word, and there's kind of like this empty dead space towards the end of the game. We're just kind of like walking through the conclusion,
so
which isn't
yeah,
great either. It's like the invert of the thing. You're like, okay, whoever goes first has this really intense early bit, and then
yeah,
it's kind of, I don't know. However, I think weirdly the solution is making it a dexterity game. I think the basketball Connect Four and the table tennis one, because you
yeah.
can't always make optimum moves, you are trying to just like you aim for what you think the best thing is, and then you're making do with what you end up.
So if
And
you had like maybe like to connect for an extra row above, that's like a pachinko thing where like you're trying to
that
get
would
them
be
in
kind of cool.
and like you're trying to
Pachinko
get them.
Four.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think adding the layer of dexterity makes the game really fresh. Like I've played a lot of the Connect Four basketball game that they have at arcades,
yeah.
and that's really fun.
Okay.
And because you can also just get straight up denied, you can just miss entirely, and they're like, "Well,
So
do you have
how would
time to try again?" No, oops, you missed the whole turn.
you do that for Connect Four? Because it's like a generally it's like a rigid kind of plastic tower
Mm.
with the slots and the dots and
There is a table tennisy kind of version one that has like ping pong balls, and it has like a catching mechanism. So like this is what the grid normally looks like at the
yeah.
top, and they add this kind of back um, ramp
Yeah.
thing that
Okay.
in the idea is that it would bounce onto the table and then up onto the ramp that I've illustrated, and then it would roll down into the grid.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that solves specifically the overpowered first player issue, but I
Mhm.
think that in the same way that tic tac toe has, is that the gameplay is relatively solved, and it's more useful as a teaching tool to young children to learn like a spatial assessment and stuff like that, rather than specifically good gameplay. Because if you're just looking for something fun, then you play like a dexterity version. If you're using it as a teaching tool, you play it as is. Um, and then like anything, if you're looking for anything beyond that in Connect Four, I think you're like looking for a whole new game, really.
Sure, yeah. What if? So here's my solution to Connect Four, and yeah, and the problem where if you're going first, you've got a sort of advantage. Um, I wonder if there's. Do you think there's world championships for Connect Four where they like duke it out? There must be.
I don't know. Not that I've heard of. I know there is for other games that people
There
complain
must.
about. Like
Yeah.
I know Scrabble is still really big.
um. Yeah. So I would actually add maybe shapes that you're trying to make,
Mm.
sort of, and they could just be like little like bit art pictograms or whatever, like a dinosaur or a horse or something.
Actually, like most Euro games, they have like a card on it, and it's got like the total grid or whatever. We have like a few parts of the grid, and it'll be like this is the shape. It's like three in a row, or an L, or four as a brick, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Your
So then,
secret scorecards you're trying to make and score.
so in terms of connect foring and getting the first turn advantage, like because you're trying to actually make different shapes in the end, it's like it's not a completely even playing field that you
Mm.
have a initial start advantage on.
Mm.
Yeah. One way though, without adding anything to the game, would just be to do like speed version. So simultaneous turn speed connect four.
That would be interesting, actually. You would like have the dial that they used in stuff like X-wing, where you swing around and it shows what your thing's going to be, but it can be a secret and you both reveal at the same time. What you would do is you would number the rows like 1 to 6, and then you would have
Yeah.
your secret dial, and then you put it on, and then you both reveal at the same time. But then if you both pick the same row, there's like a I don't know dice roll or rock paper scissors or whatever to see who gets underneath or
Yeah.
whatever. Which would be funny because imagine you're playing rock paper scissors and you're like, shit, I need my thing to go on top. I have to lose rock paper scissors to get my thing to go where I want it to go, and suddenly it's really stressful, like compared to regular gameplay. But I think that first idea is actually very good
Oh, cool. Yeah. Cute. Well, maybe we can play one of these one day. Go and jump into the tabletop simulator.
because all you have to do is add a deck of cards, and the deck of cards is just a couple of scribbles on it.
Yeah, or even like I was thinking, what you could do is on the tokens themselves, maybe have different shapes printed, and then at the start of the game, you pick up a random one, and the rest are just you just ignore them. But that's the shape you're trying to make, and so you know, manufacture. So here's the grind set part. Manufacturing wise, that would be awful because then instead of just one mold, you'd actually need like
Not if it's just printed on it.
30.
Not if it's
Yeah,
just
well,
printed on it.
okay.
Yeah, because letter drop is wooden pieces painted and then screen painted the letters across it. So
Okay.
I think it's super doable. But you would have one token per color extra than fit in the grid to accommodate that, right? And if you lose a single tile from your set, the game is useless.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately. In the same way that like Azul's tiles are so mathematically set up that if one is missing, you can't draft the game properly because there's a whole round where it's like
Yeah.
mathematically incorrect.
Well, let's fix Azul. How would we fix
Fix
that?
Azul, just ship it with spare pieces that are like
Yeah.
specifically aligned spare pieces.
Have like a panic button in
Yeah.
with new
No,
pieces.
you can't fix Azul. Azul's perfect.
Yeah.
No, the problem with Azul is no one knows how to do the basic mathematics of the scoring system.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
So
Okay, so we've absolutely fixed 2 games.
yeah, I think so. I think Connect Four much more than Catan, but we're off to a good start.
Yeah. Okay.
We're off to a good start.
So
Do you
what's
have
next?
do you have another one, Lex, or is it my turn? I'm supposed to come up with something.
Yeah. Do it.
Okay. How would you fix Pandemic? Pandemic has this problem where it feels like a solo game with 3 spectators some of the time, where
Yeah.
what each individual person is doing is irrelevant because there's only really one correct move
Yeah.
at
Every
any
time.
given time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this highlights what comes up in a lot of games where you end up having it's like a manager,
The quarterback is the
quarterback.
yeah, is what I hear it called a lot. I mean, not all Tom Brady's playing Pandemic, let me tell you.
So I think like, and I mean, it can be good for some players because they like having somebody who knows what's going on. They want to win and they don't mind, being part of it. But what's annoying is when someone's like, "You should do this,"
Mm.
um, and it's stupid to not do any other move, which
Yeah.
can happen a little bit,
So I
especially
feel
with.
like Pandemic's gameplay encourages this specifically because the game is so punishing towards bad moves and pretty punishing towards just average moves, where
Yeah,
it feels like your little mistakes pile up really, really fast. Not doing the best possible thing at the time is a detriment.
yeah,
And
yeah. So it can be frustrating to fun.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that in so the ways that I've tried to solve that in the past in other games I've designed, I guess,
Mm.
um, is either concealing information. So, for example, in Xeno Hunters, like people, you had the main space station where if you're like doing things loud and you've been revealed, you're running around and it's aliens versus hunters.
Mm.
Um, then yeah, like everyone knows what's going on, but actually each individual player has a secret grid that shows their true location. And sharing your true location, which would, give an opportunity for like the quarterback to sort of jump in and be like, "Oh, you should do this."
Yeah.
That's actually a detriment to the gameplay because the alien then knows exactly where you are,
Okay.
and so maintaining an air of mystery and independent action was like disincentivized anyone on the player team from
Mm.
trying to orchestrate everyone's moves because it would just take so long and like you don't actually know where everyone is. Have you encountered that and solved it in a particular way in the games you've made?
Um, I Okay, quickly, before I answer that, what you just said makes me really want to make a hidden movement social deduction game where you not only don't know what team people are on, you just don't fucking know where they are in the location,
Oh, yeah,
which I think would
anything
be really funny.
just yeah, individual grids. It's so fun. It's like added
Yeah.
extra. But I think people avoid it because of Battleship. And they're like, I don't want to, make something that looks like it. But
Okay.
you,
Um,
you
and then yeah, in in communicating in a game comes a lot to the social aspect of it, and it's difficult to write how to be polite and stuff like that into gaming, right?
yeah, more
Um,
issue than a mechanics issue necessarily.
yeah. So there's a
Okay.
few things where I think it can work really good and it can work really bad. Sometimes when you're not specific about what you can do and can't do is tough. A lot of games are just like you just can't talk at all, and then people are like, okay, um, which could be interesting. There's games like
So,
Steve D's game, The Score, which is like the player who has the least developed character, because your characters develop as you contribute to the story. The player with the least developed character is then forced to act, and so that means that the person always at the bottom is lifted up, and so everyone is kind of evenly spaced across each other. So there's not one person dominating the conversation and how things happen. The person who is behind is always put into that
yeah,
spotlight position,
okay.
which I think works really well in that game. I don't know if that would work in Pandemic or not. And then in a game I made, Spirits of Carter Mansion, it basically goes, you are the listening person now. Everyone else has to tell you what they think your choice is, but you are the listening person, and then you get to choose which of these options you think is the best. Which is kind of like a I cut, you choose. Everyone else suggests the option, but they have no power in the final decision. And then you're picking. So it's not like when you're interacting with the pandemic board, people are like, oh, you have to move here or you have to do this. They know what your options are. Each
Yeah,
person has their own unique option that doesn't overlap with anyone else.
yeah,
And then they're like, you should do this. You should go over to this place because I have this card that has that place's name written on it. And then the other person's like, no, but this other thing is better because I'm holding this card. And then you, as the listener, is like, well, no, I think this one is the best for whatever reasons matches what I think is best. And I think that is
that's
possible to put in there, but it's like adding a negotiation element to everything that you're doing, which is
that's true. Yeah,
probably harder
yeah.
than it needs to be.
But I mean, I think that's what we're trying to encourage, though, because if it's not in a teamwork game, so that's the other aspect of this. It's not competitive; it's cooperative. So in a
Mm.
teamwork game, like you're wanting everyone to negotiate, and if there's a quarterback, they're actually suppressing everyone and
Well, it's a
just
different goal,
avoiding the point of the game.
right? When you're playing a cooperative game, you're agreeing on working together towards a common goal. But the problem is the quarterback's goal is we are going to win the game and it is going to be glorious. And then you might have the average player whose goal is I want to play Pandemic and have fun doing it. And sometimes the Venn diagram doesn't overlap with the players that you have. I
Yeah,
think
and sometimes
that's
you
the
might have
thing.
players that just genuinely disagree about what the right
Yeah, which is probably
thing
two
is.
quarterbacks fighting each other.
Yes. So I think there are
Yeah.
multiple scenarios in which that's not great. And what could we do to fix those? Um,
Well, I think the probably easiest middleman thing you could do is currently in Pandemic, each player is a
mhm.
character, and then I believe if it's a two-player game, you each have two characters.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how it is. And in a four-player game, there's four people with one character each, right?
Yep.
Instead of doing that, you just have the correct number of useful characters on the board because some of the different character abilities don't end up in play because there's a large number of them. You just all have your characters on the board, and then on your turn, you can move any character and do anything, which
Mm,
means that whatever you think is the optimal play for any particular character, you can do, but then the quarterback isn't like if the quarterback is a bad ability character and they're watching the person with the best ability do the least effective things, they're suffering internally, like right.
mm,
Whereas if everyone can move every character, that disparity doesn't exist. Where the quarterback can focus on the one character that with their four actions that they think is going to have the most impact, and then the other people can do other things that they think are more important or whatever.
yeah. So like split up
Maybe
ability and
yeah, split up the character agency to the player agency. Rather than it being one to one, it could be imbalanced based on how useful they think each character is.
I think that like I like the idea of like splitting up the agency and the responsibility and making that part of the rule set is like, you know, yeah, like you need to let other people make the decisions. That's part of
Mm.
the rule. So I think quarterbacks love the rules and they know the optimal solution. And so I an additional aspect that might help encourage the behavior of the quarterback actually incentivizing people to be making decisions and using that power could be in pandemic um, like obfuscating some of the information a little bit so that different players are yeah like so all right so this is how the US military runs. Yeah,
Damn, we
so
went deep in the deep
back
state
in the
real
day,
fast.
yeah, so back in the day, armies in the ranks and files would get orders from the generals that would go to the lieutenants, that would go to the or captains, the lieutenants, to the officers, to the troops. And then any information would go all the way back to up to the top, and you were not allowed to do anything that you weren't told to do. And that was, you know, that was okay when everyone was playing by those rules. But then sort of warfare changed, particularly around World War One and World War Two, to the new tactic was actually we need to give people in the situations more agency to take initiative. And
Mm.
so part of the training is that yeah, the officers are given an objective and they're like, cool, do this, but you are totally like it's good if you actually come up with a plan. If something changes, you know, you react as much as you can. You call in support if you need it, but you know, it's your job to decide what to do in the scenario, and
Mm.
then everyone else takes care of the overall strategy, and that's been really successful for them for many decades. So I think that in terms of the quarterback wants to be a general, they want to optimize the move of the team so that everyone can win. So I think incentivizing them to like give the order to take independent action, and that is the optimal move in a lot of scenarios, is maybe the
Mm.
key here. So in pandemic, so we've got we've got the different countries, we've got the characters with their own abilities, we've got um the illnesses that are coming up and stuff like that. Um, I think hiding some of that information from the quarterback would be good.
Because if they have full transparency on what's going on, there's no difference between their agency and your agency.
Yeah, they can't optimize. And I guess then the challenge is like if you're giving one player information, like why wouldn't they tell the whole team? And
Mm,
that's where trader mechanics come in because you can't always trust that everyone's doing the thing that they want to be doing, and so it muddies the waters. But so introducing into pandemic either a source of obfuscation that gives players an incentive to not talk to each other,
mm.
but that might not work.
Secondary goals. I think
Yeah,
secondary goals could possibly do it. Like imagine um, you've got these four big outbreaks, and one of them is bigger than the other,
yeah,
and each each of the um, different character types, because like not all of them are scientists, not all of them are like this and that. Each of the different character types has their own special objectives deck, and so you could imagine you've drawn a scientist. Cool, you get your special objective. Excellent. Your special objective is you are sponsored by this pharmaceutical company, and unless if millions of people die from malaria, you don't get a paycheck. And you're like, I have to
yeah,
solve everything else first. I have to
yeah,
completely ignore red and I have to solve the other three things first.
yeah,
And so when the quarterback is looking at you going, why is this entire country region about to explode and we're going to lose the game? You're like, don't care. That doesn't line up with my goal. And
yeah.
they're like, well, okay.
It's really beneficial ones as well, or like maybe a certain country wants theirs to be fixed first.
Yeah, you're like a diehard loyalist to your country and refuse to leave its borders.
Yeah, a tricky solution. A
Mm.
tricky problem. Um,
Yeah, you just add like 100 unique lose conditions to the game, make it 1,000 times harder for no reason.
yeah,
Because the game is already very difficult. And I think,
yeah,
like, my problem with it, because I've played it solo with bots on Board Game Arena, is way more fun than playing it with people.
okay.
I think it
Ah,
just. I think it
yeah,
just is a solo game that they allow people to participate in.
okay,
And that's my problem with the design of the game.
sure.
And it's
Yeah,
not because I want to be a quarterback. In a scenario where there's a bunch of people and they're like, hey, we should do things, I'm like, sure.
yeah.
Sounds great.
It's sort
You
of
know.
not fun in a way to, yeah, like not be a quarterback because everyone ends up losing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm only ever hyper competitive in a one versus one scenario. Right? And so many scenarios are really just not 1v1. And when it feels like it is, it's pretty easy to distance yourself from them. When you're in a conversation with someone and they say, what you just said is incorrect, it's actually this thing, you're like, sure, I've just learned something. Like, you don't necessarily need to argue over everything, and you can always leave and double
Mm.
check or whatever later on. Like, you don't need to necessarily, in that moment, be the person that is right, be the person that is winning in a game like Pandemic, when you go, this looks like the optimal play, and people are like, oh no, I'm just going to set my pants on fire instead, you're like, okay,
Mm,
go for it.
yeah, maybe making it easier to let just have people just make fun mistakes.
Yeah, maybe if
You
the
know,
overall difficulty of the
but
game wasn't
not
so
cheating, but people will.
anxiety inducing.
So maybe what you could do is add an element where. Okay, how about this? How about this? Every player has a card that they need to keep secret,
Uh huh.
and if you have it by the end of the game, you actually get bonus points or something.
Mm hmm.
But you might actually need to use it at some point during the game to avoid losing.
Kind of like a get out of jail free card.
That's right. And
Yeah.
so like, but yeah, like the incentive to keep it private is, maybe if it is revealed, then that's
Mm.
not, there's some like penalty for that. So if
Yeah.
it comes after the player and is like, tell me what your card is, and they're like, well, if I reveal it, we actually, that's a bad
It's real
decision.
bad. I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
just trust me that I will let you know when that thing is most useful. Then someone who is a bit of a quarterback, like built into the mechanics, is a little bit of pushback, being like, hey,
Mm.
like this is, I'm from, maybe they could be like, origins, like national origins or something. Is it
Mm.
secret programs
Well, I
or?
like the idea of interdepartmental politics because, as we are all now super aware of the rollout of the COVID vaccine, had huge amounts of interdepartmental politics and how many were purchased, where it was delivered to, how all that was handled. And so now the greater public is now just super aware of kind of how these pharmaceutical companies interact. Now, if you can just imagine that goes the same way, right? A pandemic has four major breakouts. Like, okay, shit, we need to deal with these things. And then you get a card, which is this is my company. I'm Moderna or whatever. I'm Pfizer. And then Pfizer's goal is different to the overall goal of the game. Pfizer's goal is to make lots of fucking money. But specifically in this circumstance, they have a more specific goal to their parent company. But the way that the science's parent company would work differently to the way that I think there's like a helicopter dude. The helicopter dude has different goals. I don't know.
That'd be a fun
Yeah, I
game.
don't know.
Helicopter dude.
Helicopter dude, 2023 coming to a game store near you. Helicopter dude.
Yeah, why not? Sell like a copy of helicopter dude.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? Like adding,
Mm,
giving each player something that the team is incentivized to keep private to each player until it is used, and then when it is used, it is the individual decision of that player.
yeah,
And so the quarterback has less complete transparent knowledge
yeah.
of everything, and actually, it's in their best interest to let people to take on other people's opinions and information because they have information that they don't.
Mm. No, I agree. I agree.
No, fix pandemic.
We just fixed pandemic. Matt Leacock, get in my DMs.
Waiting. Yeah. What's really interesting is like there's been, especially with the D&D stuff happening right now, like the idea that big companies and corporations are sort of, yeah, like independent material is like under assault,
Mm.
and creating that, like the these large companies are trying to like claw back that kind of dynamically generated creativity and stuff from the community. Like,
Imagine how wild and different board games would be if the average punter could release an expansion to an existing game. Like, imagine I was like, you know what, fuck Catan. Here's an expansion that fixes exactly that, and then I'm now selling this product because that is currently the D&D model,
yeah,
except Wizards has gone, nah, dude, D&D's perfect. I'm not going to let you change anything unless if you give me lots of money. And you're like, okay, great.
yeah. Like, what's stopping people from, because people make homebrew changes and like upload stuff to the internet all the time, and Board Game Geek has all types of different.
It does have a lot of homebrew stuff on there.
Yeah, like, are you talking about like in a broad, like?
I mean, like in an actual published and monetized, in the
Yeah,
same way that like Drive Through RPG lets you just sell Dungeons and Dragons content. And it would be sick if I could just be like, just here's the pandemic expansion,
fuck,
deal with it.
wow.
If the people
Okay.
think this is good for the game, then they can buy it, but you can't do that.
Yeah, name it like Schmandemic.
Yeah.
Where I've noticed a bunch of Kickstarters coming out. This is interesting. Is they'll be like, Fairy Kingdom 5th edition
Yeah.
role playing game book or something, and you're like, 5th edition, is that Dungeons and Dragons? And
Yeah.
like, could be for any
Anything that has had four before it.
large playing game, internationally famous. Yeah,
Hmm.
we like, what do you think about that kind of thing? Or it's like you just make it pretty clear.
Semi-agnostic, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely some options in getting around it, but I think being sneaky and hiding away from the general scrutiny of the company is not a solution, and I think that there should be just a good commonplace thing. Because my problem is pretty much everyone in these circumstances, where that Wizards and where that Hasbro wants to run their company, is to make squillions of dollars, and that doesn't align with my goals, where I would like to make enough money to eat food today. And they're like, we're going to make sure you can't make enough money to eat food today. I'm like, well, I don't give a shit what your opinion is because it will never align with mine. I'm just always in that same position. Like,
they want to be the official source of official content, and it has, you don't have like Dragon Sex did fourth
I'm out.
edition.
You lost me. Yeah.
Like roll and
But that's the thing, like, the other part that I want is, like, if I've proven that I've made such a good supplement to your product that you have to send a cease and desist, why aren't you hiring me?
that is a good point. Well, how about this?
If you are so scared of my product being a competitor and taking money from you, hire me to make it for you so you make the money. And that should go for every single creator that's making D&D content. Like, they should have that same discussion.
Let's fix the publishing industry.
Let's fix Hasbro.
Fix Hasbro. Let's do it. Like, that's
All right.
great.
First of all, we're going to get 10 more My Little Pony seasons. That is a banger. Second of all, Magic the Gathering needs to be let go. It's gone on too long. You need to take it out the back and shoot it. You fucked it up. Next up, Transformers is coming back in a big way. We did it. We fixed Hasbro.
I think that Dungeons and Dragons should have a section of their site that is devoted entirely to ranked homebrew campaign.
It's just, yeah, just Hasbro creates drive-through RPG that is just officially made for them. Like, this shit exists already and they're not profiting off it.
Or maybe so that drive-through RPG isn't negatively affected, you could just have, you know, like a plugin or something.
Or they just buy drive-through RPG. It's not negatively affected. They walk away with a couple $1 million. But, like, that's the thing. There's these, like, I don't run a business good. If I can see these opportunities that make sense to both me and the general public, that feels like a positive thing to do, and they're not doing it, they're not close to doing it, that makes me think that their goals aren't about making good choices about the business. Their goals are about getting as much money as they can right now and then selling it to somebody else to clean up their mess. I think that's exactly where it is. Hasbro is probably just going to drop Wizards as soon as it stops being profitable because it's already downward trending. And this huge PR disaster is definitely not helping. So,
absolutely, yeah. I wonder if, like, overall there'll be a net gain though, because like the things have done this before. So I'm not saying that what Wizards is doing is deliberate. Wizards? No. Anyway.
Yeah, Wizards owns D&D.
Yeah.
Hasbro owns Wizards.
Yeah. All of negative press about this decision they're making is gonna like lead them to make not that decision. But then there'll be like there's lots of attention about the fact that they're doing it. There's lots of interest in campaigns. There's lots of discussion about like, well, who cares?
Well, like Pathfinder is blowing up right now. Pathfinder has had like a 1,000% increase in interest all of a sudden.
And so maybe if Wizards put new terms in that are more fair, like one negotiating tactic is like you start hard and then you work your way back, and you're like, okay, well here's a compromise, but that's what you're going to do anyway. So
yeah, I don't know if that.
Wizards is being like.
I don't know if that parallels though, because you're not negotiating with the general public.
Yeah.
Like you go, this is the thing, and the general public goes, that's fucked, and you go, well, I've just lost thousands of dollars. Here's my new offer, and the public's like, no, you've already communicated your intention.
Yeah. Can you earn goodwill as a big company though by listening to the community and saying, we are Wizards of the Coast. We have listened to the community's feedback on the proposed OGL, and we have decided that yes, actually, like here's our position, which understand. You need to be more profitable.
Yeah, we want more money from you.
Well, we want it to be functioning as a business. However, we do respect the fact that people want to be able to make their own stuff, and we want to encourage this kind of community. So here's our proposal. Here's our middle proposal.
Yeah.
It's going to be that Dungeons and Dragons is unleashing a new online store for blah 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 blah.
Yeah, you can upload all your content regardless of whatever it is. We will promote stuff that's doing well. We will filter stuff based on category.
Maybe that was the plan, Keith.
Well, like, why doesn't it exist already? If they're watching all these people get the bag and they're having a cry about it, why don't they encourage it? Why don't they just release a whole new store that's just going to outcompete it and make it better and promote it and encourage people to do it? Hey, you're a really good home DM. Write down your adventure and upload it to our store and you can make money. You could be a professional DM. Like, this was the main thing that hooked so many people on stuff like Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone. Because they're like, if you're slightly competitive about this, you could be the best player ever. You could come and play in the Pro World Tour. You could come and do this professionally. There's DMs out there that are like, I'm really good at this. I will write and make supplements. I want to do this for a living. and it is not encouraged by them. It is entirely off that person's own bat. If there was a thing where it was like, you could be Matt Mercer and we're going to create a fucking ladder for you to climb to get to that point, it would be way more successful than it is now. But they're not doing that at all.
They did that though, because you can get like official Critical Role supplements through D&D.
That's a partnership with them. That's not encouraging the average punter to be that person.
So here's an idea. I'm not going to, in terms of like, because the average person that makes a homebrew campaign and puts them, they don't give a shit. And like D&D isn't going to come after you if you've released something and you're selling it for like $1 on your Patreon, which isn't covered by the UGL thing. So I sort of get the feeling that a lot of this negative energy, like the people that it's being said it's about, are not actually the ones that are targeted or most affected by it. Because if you're just making stuff and it's cool for a very small community, like A, it's going to cost them more to recoup that any value, then like it's like but I think that there's probably actually a whole bunch of middle tier businesses like Pathfinder who have actually benefited massively and financially from this, and a lot of the negative energy and press is actually maybe being siphoned from those channels because they're like, oh shit, yeah, like we've based our entire business on D&D through this sort of prior thing, and if we have to start returning some kind of royalty to them, that's going to be shit for our bottom line. So let's stir up a lot of controversy and say that Wizards is trying to attack, people that are just making stuff in their basements and things like that and sharing it. But do you see what I mean? Like, I just feel like maybe it's like in political campaigns, like with Trump.
No, I see the parallel. Yeah.
Saying that people were being attacked, but like objectively,
it's the setting up the what is it, the lazy criminal Mexican that's going to come and steal your job and burgle your house as the villain for you to be afraid of, while I'm sitting here personally doing things to you that are horrible that I don't want you to think about.
So maybe there's like these mid-tier businesses that have built their entire success for not having to give Wizards anything. Which, I mean, if we had invented D&D and we found out that there was a whole bunch of stuff that was making squillions of dollars off of it, and our business was, struggling a little bit because of it, we might be like, you know what, like for future agreements, like everything in the past is fine, leave it. Future agreements, if you end up making $750,000 a year from, based on what we have created, we would like a cut of that, please. It's what Epic does with their Unreal Engine. Like, yeah, you make games, you can make up to $750,000 or whatever, or however much it is, and that's all yours. But if something goes stupidly crazy, like we've given you this tool for free, like we've saved you a lot of time and energy from building your own system and doing the marketing and doing 30 years of development and community building and all this kind of stuff. So it just feels a bit like that at the moment, that Wizards is trying to update what they're doing given the explosion of streaming and like Critical Role, and there are all of these like massive properties that are doing extremely well, and it is based off of the work that Wizards did, and
but
future-proof themselves.
Yeah,
it does do incredibly well because it's literally based on what we've done. We would like some recognition of that and some financial support for that.
I think that asking those creators for a handout, right? Hey, you've earned money from our product, give us money, is crap. I think it should be written off as a marketing expense, because without any of that content, I don't think the game would still be alive today. I don't think D&D would exist without any of this gigantic homebrew economy, without any of the homebrew stuff that Critical Role is able to do and build for their own show. We encourage so many other fans to do the same thing, to be excited about building things beyond that same thing. And I think the good parallel argument here is Skyrim, right? Skyrim's been re-released 100 million fucking times and the game's not changed. What has changed? Oh wait, actually go onto ModDB and have a look at any of the Skyrim content. People are still making like gazillion mods for this thing that add all this ridiculous new content and new looks and all this stuff to the game, and that's what's keeping people still playing it. Because the base engine is a good thing for other creators to come and create something that
That's
adds value to it,
but
right?
that doesn't mean that Skyrim should be given out for free.
No, but
No,
when you have to still buy the PHP, the all this other kind of stuff. That's your base tools to play the game, and then you're getting these additional supplements that complement those things.
that's
But without the additional supplement stuff, no one wants the base thing. No one wants Skyrim. No one
you're
wants
right.
just Player's Handbook to play the entire game. You know,
You're right.
like
Missing the fact that that most folks will assume that you will have paid money to. But is that what Dungeons and Dragons is going after? Those people though that are just writing their own thing but assuming you have the core content, which does support it, or are they going after people like Pathfinder that took the system, rewrote it, and rebuilt it? But it's like they took the thing and they have a
mm,
whole separate company that is not supporting. They're actually now an active competitor of D&D, but they literally based on the same thing. They're not
mm.
encouraging purchases of D&D. They're actually actively hurting purchases of D&D. And Wizards is kind of like, we would like that to not happen again.
Well, if that was the case, blowing up Pathfinder's bottom line over the last couple of weeks definitely hasn't achieved that.
Pathfinder's bottom line. I might have missed something.
Because Pathfinder has gotten huge since the huge OGL controversy, where basically everyone's like, "Well, I give up on D&D. I'm going to go and play Pathfinder instead."
But yeah.
So if Wizards' goal was to kind of eat back at that, then they've definitely not done that. So I don't think that's the case.
Well, yeah. I don't. I think that's like an unexpected boon to one of the competitors. Maybe that they're trying to. Uh, I imagine that at some point Wizards would have approached Pathfinder and been like, "Yo, do you want to maybe do a partnership
Mm,
like they did with Critical Role,
mm,
or they were approached, or something like that?" And potentially, or sorry, some communication would have happened between Pathfinder and either of those people would have been like, "Nah, we want to do our own thing." So either it was Wizards being like, "You're not enough of a threat." Turns out, it becomes a massive thing. Or Pathfinder was like, "We don't really need you, like, whatever."
mm,
And yeah, but with Critical Role, they were like, "Hey, like, we could just do this whole thing on our own and just base it off of not really anything you can do to stop us." But someone said yes to a proposal that they work together. So, so this haven't, yeah, maybe that process needs to be made easier
mm.
so that you can make those links and it's not, it's something that's like avoided for whatever reason. It's like you and we're trying to think of how to make a game with Warhammer. I've been trying for years to get onto them, and you have to call some dude in the UK in Australian 3 a.m. and like
Mm.
yeah, like objectively I could do that, but anyway, like it's not easy necessarily to be like, "Yo, I want to make a game with your property." You can give the final yes or no, but can I do that? Can I have some shit to do to
Mm.
do it with? And you can say yes or no to publishing. If that existed, you and I could have a Warhammer game right now.
Yeah.
Warhammer Catan, like why not?
Yeah.
And perhaps that needs to be a bit easier.
Well, like
And
I'm super open to the idea of the open license and creators working with other creators, in a way that is not like
yeah,
direct repackaging, direct plagiarism, and stuff like that.
how would you make sure that Wizards, like if you do take their stuff wholesale, like because you can copy, like the whole issue is if you copy this giant bunch of text and just stick it in your rulebook,
Mm.
like that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about completely custom content.
Mm.
Like, would you want to ensure that they can?
Well, if they have their own sales portal, they can literally scan through and check everything before it goes live to sale. they can have that kind of quality control to do exactly whatever they want with it.
I just feel like if you have created something and someone wants to base something off of that thing that you created, even if you're a giant company, I think that's sort of fair to be able to try and work out some kind of arrangement where it's mutually beneficial.
Mm.
You as a big company are incentivized to then go on to do more of those things. Um, but yeah, I don't know all the exact details though. Like maybe Wizards was like,
Who does, man?
you own everything and screw you guys.
Yeah, probably. That's
That
my
could also
assumption.
be a legitimate negotiation tactic because Wizards is probably full of people that aren't gamers, they're like business people at this point. They don't understand that if you come into the gaming space real aggressive straight away, you know, they're used to dealing in other industries where it's like, give me fucking 10 billion stables for $1 or I'll kill you, or, you know,
Yeah.
we're going to India or something. And then the other person is like, well, no, I'm like $1 million per stable. They then work down. That's just part of the process. And the
Yeah.
games industry, I think it's such a new industry and it's full of people that love it. Like, we're already sort of closer to that middle anyway.
Yeah, I feel like the average customer can smell that lack of passion on some of these faceless companies, and you make the wrong move, and they're like, "No, fuck you."
Yeah, I think they did something that would make sense in the business world, in any other industry. You
Mm.
know, it's kind of like, bang, this is it. Like, but you need a little more finesse, or like to be a bit more gentle, and actually expects the gaming creators and publishers to be starting closer to what you would want than you know. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't know.
We
So that's
are,
my perspective.
yeah, we are approaching the end of our time. Did you
That's
have
true.
any stuff that you wanted for wrap up?
Transgender update. I'm getting a haircut next week. I'm really nervous.
Mm.
I don't know. We'll see. I have finally gotten to the point where people are like, "Why your hair is so long?" And I'm like, "Oh." And
Yeah,
so,
you're gonna try and style it a particular way now.
yeah, get a bit shorter. Going for like a little, maybe some bangs, maybe down to here, trying to make it look cute. We'll see.
Sounds good.
And I've been sweating a lot
Same.
on HRT. So
Oh, I just in general. It's very hot here.
anyone that's tuning in and interested, I know you're interested. So here we go.
Yeah. Suffering with you on the front lines. This is what the exact details of the Girlboss Grindset is. It's a sweaty life.
That's it. You just keep on pushing forward no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, yeah.
That
there
is
anything you
it.
want to throw out there? Like, you working on anything?
All the stuff that I'm working on is either already announced or is in a state of disrepair and cannot announce because it might not happen, which is just really annoying.
People that have never heard of you before.
Yeah, if you're on this channel, you are either someone I know personally or have been watching my Marvel Snap content recently, both of which are pretty cool outcomes. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, you're cool as hell. There's not many of you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And
Let us know what you think, because
yeah, get in the comments, chirp up, tell me how my pandemic takes a dog tier. Like,
we're still in our first 10 episodes of figuring out what this podcast is. So feedback is great.
Exactly. All right. Well, that is another episode of the Girlboss Grindset.
It's good.
Hopefully, we'll have another one next week, same time.
We're doing pretty good.
Would be really good.
Sort of.
But you can see at the bottom, just under here is, you can find our socials. You can get on board, and you can also click the YouTube subscribe button. That would make me personally really happy.
Please do. I bought a new microphone.
Just for this, on the way here today, because I hassled her about it.
Thank you for the feedback, but the audio was shit. So
yeah, we fixed it. I think it was much better now hearing it.
Oh, good.
I think it's turned out much better.
It was better. We'll work on that.
We'll get there. But that is it from us today. We'll hope to see you in the next one.
Bye.